first item on the agenda is a discussion about our best practices inventory. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you, Mayor. Back a number of years ago, as part of the New Jersey State Toolbox to make sure that municipalities were acting and spending money in an appropriate manner, efficiently, and getting things done, they enacted the Best Practices Questionnaire. You need to get a score in 80% in order to be eligible to receive your state aid for the year. It changed direction a little bit this year. The survey, which usually was about 30 questions, was increased to 61 regular questions plus additional questions that weren't applicable to us. Came out at mid to late October and gave us a couple weeks to get it done, and also requires board discussion for a presentation to the Township Committee. Many of the questions are duplicates from past years, some are new for this year. As we have in past years, we did very well on the questionnaire. You all have a copy of it that was provided when we first did it, and then again for discussion tonight, if you wish to do so. Very similar to past years, we scored an A, got 92%, and we're eligible for all of our state aid. So I would open it up to any questions or on the Township Committee.
I have a few questions. When this came out, I read it with interest. There are some new questions out here from the past. And what stood out to me is that some of these practices would be, I think, very useful for our Economic Development Advisory Committee. And I thought I'd take a couple minutes tonight to highlight a few of the things that I think are useful and ask you to explain it for the benefit of the public. This is on the agenda as the best practices inventory, and I would encourage anyone from the public who's interested to get a copy of it. So let me just go through a couple and ask for your explanation for the benefit of the people who are here. It talks about filing a copy of current shared service agreements. We've done that?
Yes, ma'am.
Approximately how many shared services are on our list?
Approximately a dozen.
Okay. I'd like to see that at some point and just review it. I thought question number 22 was of interest to me. Exploring shared service opportunities with other local governments, including boards of education. Can you just comment a little bit on our exploration of shared services with the Board of Education?
Yes, we work with the Board of Education, and we have a shared service for the school resource officer that we've had for many, many years. That gets renewed, and there's a cost share where we get reimbursed for 50% of the officer's salaries, and he is assigned to Freeling Heights Middle School on a pretty much a full-time basis. And then this past spring, we entered in with the Morris School District, and we're being reimbursed 100%, but that is the Class 3 special police officers. So with our 6 schools, we have put in a Class 3, they're retired police officers. Their 100% of their time is devoted to school security and making sure that working with our schools to make sure they're safe for the most precious commodity we have, our children, in attending there. And with that, we are being reimbursed by the school district for their salaries, for the cost of Social Security, cost of uniforms, and equipment.
Thank you. We have other informal agreements as well, correct?
Yes, we do. We have a number of informal agreements with the school district where we assist them with like salt in the wintertime, and then they turn around and they give us space for our recreation programs, gymnasiums, classrooms, those kinds of things.
Glad to hear that. Thank you. Question 35. Does your municipality have a current community and or economic development plan with established metrics? That's one of the ones that we answered no to.
Correct.
But I would like to see us in the future establish a strategic plan including some metrics. So from my view, that's on our future horizon for 2019. There were a number of listed at the end that were directed for communities that have opportunity zones. And although we do not have that here in Morris Township, I thought a lot of those actions would be useful for us anyway, including things like making a list of your distinctive assets, thinking about the type of economic development your community is actively pursuing, and various inventories of other things, which I won't list all the details here. But I found this to be very interesting, and I encourage anyone from the public who's interested to take a look at it. And we did do very well. I think it was a score of 98%, so that's not the problem. I thought it was a very interesting document as far as making us aware of what best practices are.
And to add on to that, the administrator, Tim Quinn, and our chief financial officer, Francine D'Angelis, did a wonderful job in putting this together and keeping us on track to do things we should be doing. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Francine. Okay.
No, he's not.
Ordinances for public hearing and final consideration. Mr. Mills.
32-18, establishing salaries and compensation for employees of the Firemen's Mutual Benevolent Association, FMBL 70, Morris, as you indicated, Mayor, for public hearing.
All right, at this time, I'll open the meeting to anyone who'd like to be heard on ordinance number 32-18. Seeing no one, ask for a motion.
So moved.
And a vote. A second, please. Second.
And that is for adoption and to
Yeah.
close the public hearing.
Mr. Romanidis?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Sisler?
Yes.
Mr. Nunn?
Yes.
Mayor Mancuso?
I, Peter Mancuso, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same and directed the clerk to publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills.
33-18, amending Chapter 460 entitled Towing.
Anybody from the public care to be heard on ordinance number 33-18, final passage? Seeing no one, I'd ask for a motion, please. So
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Romanidis?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Sisler?
Yes.
Mr. Nunn?
Yes.
Mayor Mancuso?
Yes. I, Peter Mancuso, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed. Approve the same and direct the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 34-18.
An ordinance of the Township of Morris amending Schedule 20 of Chapter 88, Article 10, Section 88-10.2, stop intersections designated.
I'll open the meeting to the public. Anyone care to be heard on ordinance number 34-18? Seeing no one, I'll take a motion for approval. So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Romanidis?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Sisler?
Yes.
Mr. Nunn?
Yes.
Mayor Mancuso?
Yes. Good. All right, we now have resolutions number 245-18 to 279-18.
Subject to, if I may, Mayor, the addition of
Yeah.
the three tax appeal resolutions. 280-18 settles property taxes, block 9002, lots 2917 Normandy Parkway. 281-18 authorizes settlement of tax appeal, block 4401, lot 2, 8 Reed Road. And lastly, 282-18 authorizes settlement of tax appeals, block 7804, lot 2, 23 Van Buren.
Okay. Let anyone offer those resolutions?
May I ask a couple of questions before we vote? I would ask if Mr. Quinn, we have several resolutions on here dealing with work on the Skyline Drive sewer project. If you could just explain for the benefit of the public what is going on and what the timeline is.
The Skyline has been on the books for a while. We've been, a lot of issues up there because of the rock and everything else. We finally got it ready to go, working with Mott McDonald to do all the design work, the bid specs. The bids went out, they were bid on, and we have a resolution tonight for the Township Committee to consider to put in, it's about a $4.7 million project to put up sewers for Skyline Drive, Rolling Hill Drive, and a little bit of Hayes Drive, and bring that into the Township facilities on that. Mont McDonald will provide the oversight for that, to make sure that everything is done correctly and within all of our permits, and also all the reporting that we have to do back to DEP for compliance.
Okay, we also have several resolutions dealing with upgrades to our sewer plants. Could you summarize what those are?
There's two of them, and this is for not the upgrades themselves, but doing the design work for those upgrades, structural repairs that are needed at the Butterworth Sewer Treatment Plant, and then also at the Woodland Sewer Treatment Plants for some internal piping that deals with the nitrate system. That was the $6 million project we had to do a number of years ago, and some of the piping was undersized. It needs to be replaced and to make it more the plant more efficient. So I'm moving forward on those projects, and then once that is done, then they'll go out to bid and then award to a contractor for that. Money's been appropriated down the road for those projects.
Okay, thank you.
May I hear a motion to approve and approve for all the resolutions?
Is it possible, before we do all of them, we pull 270-18, if it's appropriate, Mr. Quinn, one of the bidders on that project had a question before we actually, whatever, if it's not appropriate, then I'm okay with moving all of them together.
Procedurally, it can be pulled if the body is willing to, so there's a motion to set aside 270-18 for consideration. Is there a consensus on that? Deals with the Collinsville contract process.
basis of, or
What's the,
One of the bidders had a question, which I'm not sure if anything, if you had a question, I mean, the question could take place after, but it's.
It's actually written into the resolution, so.
Well, we have an application by Mr. Ordinances to summarize it. Why don't we, for simplicity's sake, get a consensus on that, then if it is to pull it, act on the remainder, and then, Tim, you can summarize the issues if it's handled separately on 278.
Okay.
So, Mayor, you have to see if there's a consensus to act on Mr. Ordinances' application to separate 278.
why don't we pass all the resolutions from 245-18 to 282-18, and we'll pull that one for separate votes?
27018, that's
Yeah.
what's okay?
Somebody,
second.
second, roll call.
Mr. Robinetti?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Sisler?
Yes.
Mr. Nutt?
Yes.
Mayor Meeker?
Yes.
Mr. Urbanese, with respect to that resolution, it has been through the bid review committee, and Mr. Quinn has some additional information. If it's okay, he'll address.
Well, I'm aware of the bid process and what went through. I already discussed it with Mr. Quinn. One of the bidders came up earlier and just had a question, so I wasn't sure prior to actually doing the vote, out of courtesy to a bidder to allow them to ask their question and get the answer. I didn't know what the answer was, so. No problem.
Certainly. Come on up.
Sir, please.
Hey,
Identify yourself.
Thank you. My name is Ed Miller. I'm the owner of Porky Associates. I'm also the president. We submitted a bid earlier on this month for this project for Collinsville. We were a little bidder. However, my understanding is that the bid is being rejected for failure to submit a surety consent, which, while I do understand, is in the bid and it does state that that is a fatal flaw. My concern and my frustration is that the bid bond is one method of security. Another method of security that is put into the bid is a cashier's check or a bank check for 10%. That's standard wording that we see all the time. We've been bonded for many years. We provide bid bonds all the time. My bonding company made an error, couldn't provide us in time, so we did provide the ultimate security. I was advised by my bonding company that you can't provide a consent to surety without a bid bond. So my concern or my frustration is, how can the consent of surety portion be a requirement if you can't supply it when you're providing the alternate method of security of the cashier's check? So we didn't supply a consent to surety because it only comes with a bid bond. We knew we couldn't get a bid bond because of an error on our part, which we acknowledged. But we did provide an alternate method of security in the bid, or an alternate method of security which is listed in the bid, as the 10% check, 10% bank check. So, you know, like I said, that's my frustration. The consent to surety, if its intent is to ensure that a performance bond is provided with the awarded bidder, the bid provides that protection by mandating that the awarded bidder has to provide a performance bond, or the contract is voided. So, as the low bid and as the township president, I'm hoping that, you know, either I can get an explanation about that or how that works, or maybe offer, you know, if you can consider a change of that. I have spoken to the purchasing agent, tried to explain that and say we can get a bid bond. We had no problem doing that, exchanging that in lieu of our cashier's check, but that's our position on it. I just wondered if that is how that works.
As to the actual mechanics of which came first, the chicken or the egg, I can't be particularly helpful. But I did look at your issue, and the leading case is captioned Meadowbrook Karting versus some municipality, I can't recall which, but it listed as a fatal defect, the failure to provide a consent of surety to issue a performance bond should the contract be awarded to the apparent low bidder. I don't see anywhere where the municipality has the discretion to say, well, it's okay this time, you can make it up later. There's a certain group of documents that are required prior to the award of bid to put all the bidders on equal footing. That happens to be one of them.
But if the consent to surety is only applicable when you provide a bid bond, why is it worded in such a way? It's not just this bid, every bid is worded in such a way that allows an alternate method of security.
I can't speak to that, but it was listed as a requirement of the bid, the consent of surety, and, you know, the non-compliance is that deprives this body of the ability to overlook its absence. And that's all I can say to them. I'm sorry. And I know it's confusing, and some of it to a degree may be counterintuitive. I'm not trying to
That's why I offer the option of providing an alternate security if you can't get the second with the alternate.
I didn't look into that, but, you know, maybe that spoke about if you put up a letter of credit, for example, or something like that, but whatever the alternate means you proposed was not provided.
Well, we provided the cashier's check, the bank check for the 10%.
The 10%, that's
Right.
correct. But then the balance of the performance bond, there was no assurance provided.
Performance bond was only required upon awarded contract.
That's true, the actual bond itself. But proof is required that the performance bond would be capable of being furnished at the time the bid was submitted.
That protection is already there in the wording itself.
I would say reasonable minds differ. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Yes. Mr. Abadidis.
Before we take the vote, I'd like to say that through the Parks and Recreation Committee, working with Tim and with Mayor Mancuso, we were able to come up with an agreement to present this to the governing body to vote for this today so we can move the project forward. That's been we were waiting a long time to move this project, so I'm glad that we were able to work this out and get this to the governing body to vote for today. Move it forward. Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson.
I'm sorry this situation has occurred, but I am voting yes.
Mrs. Whistler.